Archaeologist third-class Zixtal pressed their sensory appendages against the obsidian-like surface of the vault, feeling the quantum resonance beneath. After 300 cycles of sifting through space debris and cataloging primitive alien artifacts, they had finally found something extraordinary. The vault's surface rippled like liquid metal under their touch, yet remained harder than neutron-forged steel. Preliminary analysis complete, announced the survey drone hovering beside them. Structure predates local stellar formation by approximately 2.3 million cycles. Material composition, unknown. Zixtal's chromatophores flickered with excitement, their skin shifting through shades of azure and gold. The rest of the salvage team gathered around, their environment suits casting long shadows in the pale light of the Carina Nebula. They had expected another routine salvage operation. Instead, they'd found what appeared to be a pre-consolidation artifact of impossible age. "Look at these markings," senior researcher Valshern said, her tendrils waving in agitation. "They're not random patterns. They're Earth symbols. Primitive ones." "Impossible," Zixtal whispered, but their superior was right. Etched into the vault's surface were unmistakable representations of human constellations, interwoven with what appeared to be prehistoric cave paintings. Hunting scenes, tribal gatherings, and above them all, a repeated motif of upright figures reaching toward a spiral galaxy. The team's xenolinguist, a crystalline entity named Winter That Breaks, chimed in with harmonics of confusion. These symbols match Earth's Paleolithic period. Humans were still learning to control fire when these were made. They hadn't even developed agriculture. Yet here they are, Valshern said, on a quantum-locked vault older than this star system. The vault's surface suddenly pulsed with deep blue light, responding to their presence. Lines of energy traced the ancient etchings, and the structure began to hum at a frequency that made Zixtal's internal organs vibrate uncomfortably. "All personnel, stand back," Valshern ordered, but her warning came too late. The vault's surface liquefied, flowing like mercury, revealing a chamber within. The team's collective breath caught as soft light spilled out, illuminating objects that could not exist. Inside, suspended in quantum stasis fields, were artifacts that defied explanation. A sphere of translucent crystal contained what appeared to be a miniature galaxy, stars wheeling in perfect motion. Beside it, a device of flowing metal adjusted itself like a living thing, its surface covered in the same primitive Earth symbols. By the first light, Winter That Breaks chimed, their crystalline form resonating with shock. Those are navigation devices, star charts, but they're millions of cycles old. The devices activated at the sound of Winter's harmonic voice. The miniature galaxy expanded, filling the chamber with holographic stars. Overlaid on the star map were thousands of points of light, each marked with those same primitive Earth symbols. "Those are colony markers," Zixtal said, their voice barely a whisper. "Human colonies, spanning half the galaxy. But that's impossible. Humanity only achieved spaceflight in their solar year 1961. They've barely left their solar system even now." A final device activated, a simple crystal sphere that projected images into their minds. They saw great cities of impossible architecture, humans walking among the stars without protection, children playing with physics as if it were clay. They saw an empire that spanned thousands of worlds, wielding power that made their current technology look primitive. And then they saw those same humans, those gods among the stars, deliberately taking it all apart. Piece by piece, world by world, they watched humanity disconnect from their power, bury their achievements, and lock away their legacy in vaults like this one. The message ended with a warning written in those same primitive symbols. Remember why we chose to forget. Valshern's voice shook as she activated her emergency beacon. Get me the Galactic Council. Now. And whatever you do, don't let Earth know what we found. Not yet. As if in response to her words, similar signals began pinging across their sensors. More vaults, awakening across the galaxy, each bearing the same impossible truth about humanity's hidden past. Zixtal's quarters aboard the research vessel Eternal Seeker were cluttered with holographic projections, each displaying fragments of the impossible discovery. Their disgrace among the archaeological community had taught them one valuable lesson: the most significant findings often hid in plain sight, in the details others dismissed. Display comparative analysis, they commanded. The ship's AA complied, overlaying the vault's warning symbols with known human cave paintings. The correlation was undeniable, yet troubling. Every human archaeological site they'd studied showed a clear progression of artistic sophistication. These symbols, however, appeared deliberately primitive, as if someone with advanced artistic knowledge had chosen to write in humanity's earliest language. A soft chime announced Valshern's arrival. The Council has quarantined all findings, she said, her usual confident posture notably absent. They're calling an emergency session. First time in 300 cycles. They're afraid, Zixtal noted, their skin rippling with shades of deep purple insight. But they're afraid of the wrong thing. Look at this. They gestured to a hologram showing the dismantled technology from the vault. Every piece was taken apart methodically. Not destroyed, disabled. The preservation quality is remarkable, yet each component was carefully separated to prevent reactivation. Valshern moved closer, her tendrils curling with interest. Deliberate technological regression. But why would an advanced civilization? Not regression, Zixtal interrupted, their chromatophores flashing with excitement. Containment. Look at the psychic residue readings from the artifacts. The data streamed across the room in cascading waves of color. Most ancient artifacts carried emotional imprints, pride, ambition, fear of enemies. But these, terror, Valshern whispered, pure primal terror, but not of external threats. Exactly. Zixtal expanded the display, showing similar readings from other activated vaults. They were afraid of themselves. Something about their advancement terrified them enough to abandon it all. A new alert flashed across their displays, Winter That Breaks requesting entry. The crystalline, xenolinguist vibrated with urgent harmonics as they entered. You need to see this. We've decoded more of the warning symbols. The holographic display shifted, showing sequences of the primitive markings. We assumed they were simple warnings, Winter chimed. They're not. They're instructions. Humanity didn't just hide their technology. They encoded the reason why into the most fundamental language they had, ensuring any future humans would understand, regardless of their level of advancement. Zixtal felt their blood run cold as the translations appeared. Fragments at first, dreams becoming real, thoughts reshaping space, children's nightmares manifesting, reality bleeding. There's more. Winter That Breaks continued, their crystalline form dimming with concern. The vaults weren't meant to preserve their technology. They were meant to keep something contained, something within humanity itself. Valshern's tendrils coiled tightly. The Council believes we should still fear humanity's potential for violence, for conquest, but their own ancestors. Her voice trailed off as new data streamed in. Their own ancestors feared humanity's potential for something far worse, Zixtal finished. They didn't fall. They didn't lose a war. They chose this. They walked away from godlike power because something about their advancement was threatening the fabric of reality itself. The ship's emergency alerts suddenly blared. On the main display, signals began appearing. More vaults activating across the galaxy, responding to some invisible trigger. Each activation pulsed with the same rhythmic pattern, like a countdown. "No," Zixtal whispered, their skin blanching to pale grey as understanding dawned. "We didn't just find their warning. By investigating all these sites simultaneously, we've initiated some kind of failsafe. We're waking something up." On the displays, the translation of the final warning symbol appeared. "Remember why we chose to forget. And pray our descendants are wiser when they remember." Valsharan's voice shook as she activated her emergency communicator. "This is Senior Researcher Val Sharan. Priority 1 alert to all Council vessels. We need to reach Earth immediately. Whatever humanity was containing, we may have just released it." In their quarters, surrounded by the evidence of humanity's deliberate downfall, Zixtal realized the true nature of their discovery. They hadn't just found humanity's past. They'd accidentally triggered humanity's reawakening. And no one, not even humanity's ancient masters, knew what that would mean for the universe. The Eternal Seeker's long-range sensors painted a disturbing picture across the galactic map. Each activated vault pulsed in perfect synchronization, forming a pattern that had been invisible until now. Zixtal traced the connections with a trembling appendage, their chromatophores locked in a pale shade of revelation. "It's not random," they said, watching as Valsharan and Winter that breaks studied the display. The vaults form concentric rings, spreading outward from Earth. Not just security checkpoints, they're containment layers. Like quarantine protocols, Valsharan agreed, her tendrils writhing with nervous energy. Each ring more sophisticated than the last. But look at the dates we've recovered. The temporal data floated before them, a cascade of impossible numbers. The outermost vaults were the newest, sealed mere thousands of years after the inner ones. Each ring represented another layer of voluntary technological regression, moving inward toward Earth. Winter that breaks chimed in distressed harmonics. They weren't just containing technology, they were containing knowledge itself. Each ring shows evidence of humanity deliberately eliminating different aspects of their advancement. Space travel, energy manipulation, even basic physics understanding. New data streamed in from the research teams scattered across the galaxy. Each vault told the same story: carefully dismantled cities, methodically buried achievements, and warnings left in increasingly primitive forms of communication. "Look at this." Zixtal highlighted a sequence from a vault in the Orion Spur. The holographic display showed humans, beings who had mastered starflight and energy manipulation, teaching themselves to forget. Generation by generation, they eliminated their own understanding, replacing quantum mechanics with simple machines, replacing stellar navigation with basic agriculture. Valsharan's voice was barely a whisper. They didn't just hide their technology, they rewrote their own history, their own minds. The ship's AI interrupted with a priority alert. Another vault had been breached, this one in the Pleiades cluster. The footage showed a massive underground complex, stretching for kilometers. Unlike the other sites, this one contained intact residential areas, a snapshot of daily life from humanity's height of power. But something was wrong. The residences showed signs of hasty evacuation. Personal belongings left behind, meals half-eaten, entertainment systems still running ancient programs. As if an entire population had suddenly fled from something invisible. "Cross-reference the emotional imprints," Zixtal commanded. The data streams merged, showing a pattern that made their internal organs clench with dread. The fear wasn't sudden. It built gradually as their technology advanced. The more they learned, the more they mastered, the more terrified they became. Winter that breaks crystalline form resonated with a new discovery. These neural imprints, they're not just records. They're changes in the quantum field itself. Human consciousness was beginning to alter local reality. The more advanced they became, the stronger the effect. And the less control they had over it. Valshern added, her scientific detachment crumbling. Their thoughts were bleeding into reality. Their dreams, their nightmares. A final piece of footage played across the holographic display. A human child, no more than 6 years old, playing in what looked like a park. As the child laughed, flowers sprouted from bare metal. As they cried, rain fell upward. Reality itself bent around their emotional state. That's why they ran, Sixtol whispered. Why they chose to forget. Their power wasn't just technological. It was evolving into something else, something they couldn't control. The ship's sensors blared again. On Earth, quantum fluctuations were beginning to appear. Similar to the ancient readings, but unfocused, chaotic. Modern humans, their minds still untrained, were starting to remember. Valshern's tendrils coiled tightly. We need to reach Earth now. Before. She never finished. Across every display, across every sensor, reality itself seemed to shudder. In orbit around Earth, the first dreams of 7 billion awakening humans began to take physical form. Zixtal watched in horror as the patterns merged into understanding. Humanity hadn't contained an external threat. They had contained themselves. And now, before they were ready, before they had learned the control their ancestors had deemed essential, they were beginning to remember their power. The question wasn't whether humanity would awaken. The question was whether reality itself would survive their awakening. The abandoned station hung at the edge of the galaxy like a dead star, its ancient hull scarred by millions of years of cosmic radiation. The Eternal Seeker approached cautiously, its sensors struggling to penetrate the quantum interference surrounding the structure. This is it, Zixtal said, their skin shifting through shades of anticipation and fear. The source of the activation signal, the first vault. The station's interior was unlike anything they'd seen in the other sites. No careful dismantling here, no methodical regression. This place had been abandoned in a hurry, its corridors still bearing signs of panic. Floating displays flickered with phantom power, showing fragments of the last moments before evacuation. The memory crystals are intact. Winter that breaks chimed, their crystalline form resonating with the station's residual energy. But there's something different about these. They're not just recordings. They're aware. Valshern approached a central console, her tendrils moving with practiced precision over the ancient controls. The quantum signature matches Earth's current fluctuations. Whatever's happening there now, it started here. The station hummed to life around them, responding to their presence. Holographic displays activated, showing scenes that made their alien minds real. Humans, at the height of their power, wielding forces that defied comprehension. Children reshaping matter with thoughts, artists painting new realities into existence, scientists whose theories literally rewrote local physics. Playing primary archive, the station's A announced, its voice carrying echoes of millions of years of isolation. The scene that unfolded showed a human research team, their faces drawn with exhaustion and fear. Log date final. A woman spoke, her voice tight with controlled panic. The correlation is undeniable. Human consciousness doesn't just observe quantum states, it creates them. Our technological advancement has been amplifying this effect exponentially. The recording showed their experiments. Simple at first, thoughts influencing quantum particles. Then bigger effects. Dreams manifesting as temporary realities, emotional states altering local spacetime. With each advancement, each new technology, the effect grew stronger. We thought we were advancing, the woman continued. But we were evolving, changing into something else. Something that reality itself wasn't designed to handle. Zixtal watched in horror as the evidence mounted. Entire cities phasing between quantum states based on collective human dreams. Children's nightmares creating temporary black holes. The very fabric of spacetime beginning to fray around concentrated human populations. The containment protocols were our last resort, another scientist explained. We have to forget, have to regress. Not just our technology, our very understanding of reality. Because the more we understand, the more we change, and the more we change. The recording broke off as alarms blared. Through the station's windows, they saw reality itself beginning to crack. Dreams and thoughts bleeding through, creating impossible geometries, rewriting the laws of physics. Emergency protocol activated, the station A announced. Initiating species-wide cognitive regression. May our descendants forgive us. The recording ended, but the station had one final revelation. A sealed quantum core containing the complete records of humanity's discovery. Their transformation wasn't just possible, it was inevitable. Consciousness itself was a force that shaped reality, and humanity's was evolving faster than the universe could adapt. That's why the quarantine had to be perfect, Valsharn whispered. Why they had to forget everything. The very knowledge of their potential was enough to trigger the change. A priority alert flashed across their displays. On Earth, the effects were accelerating. 7 billion humans, their potential suddenly unleashed, their minds untrained, were beginning to dream reality apart. We have to seal this place, Zixtal said, their chromatophores pulsing with urgent patterns. The knowledge here, it's too dangerous. If humanity accesses these records before they're ready. But it was already too late. The station's quantum core pulsed, responding to something they couldn't perceive. Across the galaxy, the containment protocols their ancestors had so carefully crafted were unraveling. Humanity wasn't just remembering their past, they were remembering what they could become. And this time, there were no ancient guardians to show them how to control it. The first incident occurred in a small kindergarten in Tokyo. 5-year-old Sakura Tanaka was drawing during playtime when her crayon strokes began to glow. The butterflies she'd sketched peeled themselves from the paper, their wings shimmering with impossible colours as they fluttered around the stunned classroom. Halfway across the world, in a Chicago art gallery, Marcus Chen stepped back from his latest painting and watched in disbelief as the waves he'd created began to move. The canvas rippled like real water, and salt spray misted the air around it. When he reached out to touch it, his hand went straight through. The Eternal Seeker's sensors registered thousands of similar anomalies appearing across Earth's surface. Reality was becoming fluid, responding to human creativity and imagination in ways that defied physical laws. "It's happening too fast," Valsharn said, her tendrils writhing with anxiety as she studied the data streams. The ancient humans had generations to understand their abilities before they reached this level. These humans have no preparation, no control. Zixtal watched the feeds with mounting horror. A mathematician's equations were rewriting local gravity. A poet's words were becoming literal reality, her metaphors taking physical form. In a Sydney hospital, A dreaming patient's nightmares were seeping into the waking world, transforming the corridors into something that hurt to look at. The quantum resonance is amplifying exponentially. Winter that breaks chimed, their crystalline form vibrating with distress. Each manifestation is making the next one easier. They're teaching themselves by accident. On their screens, more reports flooded in. A child's laugh created flowers from concrete. A teenager's anger turned rain to fire. An elderly man's memories of war began manifesting phantom tanks on peaceful streets. The Galactic Council's emergency session was broadcast across all channels. Earth must be contained, the first speaker declared. The human consciousness virus is spreading. If it reaches critical mass. They never finished. Every screen, every sensor, every quantum detector suddenly blazed with activity. In a bedroom in London, a 6-year-old boy had awakened from a nightmare about monsters. Unlike normal children's dreams, his terror had substance. Reality cracked around his bed, and something began crawling through. New reading. Zixtal's chromatophores flashed urgent patterns. Quantum fluctuation centered on Beijing. A young physicist. She's not just manifesting thoughts. She's starting to understand how it works. The feed showed Dr. Lin Wei in her laboratory, surrounded by swirling equations that hung in the air like smoke. As they watched, she reached out and touched one, and the laws of thermodynamics hiccuped around her. They're beginning to theorize about their own abilities, Valsharn whispered. The more they understand, the stronger it gets, just like before. The Eternal Seeker shuddered as another wave of quantum distortions washed over Earth. In a Mumbai temple, a priest's prayers were becoming visible, manifesting as mandalas of light that rewrote reality in geometric patterns. In a Brazilian rainforest, a shaman's ancient chants were giving physical form to spirits that had previously existed only in legend. We have to do something. Winter that breaks resonated. At this rate, they'll tear reality apart before they learn to control it. But Zixtal had noticed something else. Among the chaos, patterns were emerging. The young artist in Chicago had learned to contain his manifested worlds within their frames. The kindergarten teacher in Tokyo was teaching her students to make their dream butterflies vanish when playtime ended. The physicist in Beijing was developing equations to predict and control the effects. Look, they said, their skin shifting to thoughtful blue. They're adapting, faster than their ancestors did. As if some part of them remembers not just the power, but the responsibility. A new alert flashed, quantum signatures converging on CERN. Scientists there had begun to understand what was happening. Not with fear, like their ancestors, but with cautious fascination. They were already working on theories to explain and contain these new abilities. But time was running out. As human consciousness expanded into its ancient potential, reality itself was beginning to strain. The question wasn't whether humanity could learn to control their power. It was whether they could learn fast enough to prevent catastrophe. And in London, the boy's nightmare was still growing. The final vault's opening sequence initiated without warning. Deep beneath the Mariana Trench, ancient machinery awakened, pushing a structure the size of a small city through layers of sediment toward the surface. The Eternal Seeker's crew watched in stunned silence as the facility breached the waves, water cascading from its pristine surfaces. The first vault, Valsharn breathed, her tendrils coiling in recognition, the place where they made their choice. Inside, they found no signs of panic or hasty evacuation. Instead, the facility was immaculate, preserved in quantum stasis. Holographic displays activated as they entered, showing scenes from humanity's last days of full power. playing Final Archive, announced a voice that sounded eerily human. The chamber filled with images of a council chamber, where representatives of humanity's trillion-strong empire had gathered to face an impossible choice. The simulations are conclusive. A woman in simplified robes addressed the assembly. Our consciousness is evolving beyond physical constraints. We're becoming something else. Something that reality cannot contain. The recording showed their evidence. Human thoughts warping space-time, dreams becoming alternate universes, children accidentally creating pocket dimensions. Their technology had accelerated this evolution far beyond natural rates, pushing them toward a transformation they couldn't control. We have 3 choices. Another speaker rose. Continue advancing and risk destroying reality itself. Attempt to control it through technological means, which our simulations show will fail. Or choose to forget. The first speaker finished. To give our descendants time to evolve naturally, to develop the wisdom needed to handle this power before they rediscover it. Zixtal watched in awe as humanity's greatest achievement played out before them. Not their mastery of space and time, but their willingness to give it up to protect existence itself. The facility's AI continued, displaying the intricate plan they'd created. The regression would be gradual, controlled. Each generation would lose a little more knowledge, a little more power, until humanity returned to a pre-technological state. But they'd hidden triggers, fail-safes that would reawaken their potential only when they'd achieved the necessary wisdom to control it. The plan was perfect. Winter that breaks chimed softly, until we accidentally activated everything at once. New alerts flashed across their screens. The quantum distortions around Earth were reaching critical levels. In London, the boy's nightmare had grown, threatening to tear a hole in reality. In Beijing, Dr. Lin Wei's understanding was expanding exponentially, her consciousness beginning to transcend her physical form. But something else was happening too. The ancient facility had begun broadcasting, sending out a signal that reached not through space, but through human consciousness itself. Across Earth, people were receiving not just power, but understanding. The accumulated wisdom of their ancestors, compressed into quantum packets of pure knowledge. They saw it happening in real time. The London boy's parents, suddenly knowing how to help him control his fears. Dr. Lin Wei's colleagues, instinctively understanding how to ground her expanding consciousness. The Chicago artist, learning to contain his manifested worlds. It wasn't just a warning they left us. Zixtal realized, their chromatophores pulsing with revelation. It was a guide. They knew this might happen, knew we might trigger things too early. So they left everything we'd need to handle it. Valsharan's tendrils waved in understanding. The vaults, the regression, the hidden knowledge, it wasn't just about preventing disaster. It was about giving humanity a second chance to get it right. The facility's final message played, meant not for them, but for humanity itself, to our descendants. We chose to forget so you could remember differently. Our power came before our wisdom, and we nearly destroyed everything. You're receiving this knowledge now, because something has forced your evolution ahead of schedule. But you're not alone. Everything we learned, everything we understood about controlling these abilities, we preserved for you. The choice we faced is now yours, to transform reality or to protect it. We pray you choose more wisely than we initially did. Around Earth, reality continued to warp and bend. But now, slowly, patterns of order began to emerge from the chaos. The emergency session of the Galactic Council erupted into chaos as the quantum readings from Earth continued to spike. On the central display, reality itself wavered like heat distortion around the planet. Human consciousness was shaping the fabric of space-time with every passing moment. We must act now. The Preserver faction's leader, a being of pure energy, pulsed with urgent patterns. Initiate the containment protocols. If we sterilize the system immediately, we might prevent. Murder trillions to save yourselves. Val Sharon's voice cut through the chamber. She stood at the podium, her tendrils rigid with determination. Behind her, Zixtal and Winter That Breaks flanked her with unified purpose. You've seen the archives. You know what humanity's ancestors chose. They had this power before, and they gave it up to protect everyone. That was then, another council member countered. These humans have no such wisdom. Look. The display shifted to London, where the boy's nightmare had torn a hole in reality nearly a kilometre wide. Strange geometries poured through, threatening to rewrite local physics. But around the anomaly, something remarkable was happening. Other humans had formed a circle, their combined consciousness creating a barrier of pure thought containing the breach. They're learning, Zixtal said, their chromatophores shimmering with hope. Faster than we imagined possible. The ancient knowledge is spreading, teaching them control. In Beijing, Dr. Lin Wei had stabilized, her expanded consciousness now anchored by a network of linked minds. The equations that had threatened to rewrite physics had become a framework for understanding and controlling their new abilities. The Chicago artist had gathered others like him, teaching them to contain their manifested realities within consensual bounds. The kindergarten teacher in Tokyo had turned her classroom into a training ground, helping children understand the responsibility that came with their dreams. But the preservers weren't convinced. Look at the quantum readings. Their power grows exponentially. If even one of them loses control. A new signal interrupted them. From the first vault beneath the Pacific, a transmission began broadcasting on all frequencies. The chamber filled with the image of a human child, the London boy whose nightmare had started the crisis. But he wasn't alone. Behind him stood representatives of humanity, their consciousness visibly rippling through reality around them. "We understand now," the boy said, his voice carrying echoes of ancient wisdom merged with innocent clarity. "What we can do, what we could become, and what we might destroy if we're not careful." Dr. Lin Wei stepped forward, her form shifting between physical and something else. Our ancestors chose to forget because they gained power before wisdom. We're being forced to gain both simultaneously. It's dangerous, yes, but we're not choosing to transform reality. She smiled. We're choosing to protect it. The quantum distortions around Earth began to stabilize, not disappearing, but organizing into patterns, controlled and contained by human consciousness itself. The ancient humans didn't just leave us knowledge. Another speaker said, the Chicago artist whose paintings now stayed obediently within their frames. They left us choice, and we choose balance. The council chamber erupted in argument. The preservers demanded immediate action, while others called for observation, for trust, for hope. The debate raged until a new reading appeared on their sensors. Reality around Earth had stabilized completely. Humans were still manifesting abilities, still reshaping quantum states with their thoughts, but within carefully maintained boundaries. They had done in days what their ancestors had taken generations to learn, how to hold power without being consumed by it. Val Sharon's tendrils moved in ancient signs of respect. They remember why their ancestors chose to forget, and they're choosing differently. The Council's decision wasn't unanimous, but it was clear. Humanity would be watched, guided where needed, but allowed to continue their extraordinary evolution. Not because they weren't dangerous, they were perhaps the most dangerous species in existence, but because they had proven they understood the responsibility that came with such power. As the session ended, Zixtal watched Earth on the display, their chromatophores showing colours of wonder. Humanity hadn't just remembered their legacy, they had transcended it. 1 year after the awakening, the Eternal Seeker orbited Earth, its sensors recording the most remarkable transformation in galactic history. Zixtal stood at the observation deck, their chromatophores shifting through patterns of awe as they watched humans navigate their new reality. Streams of consciousness-altered matter flowed through designated corridors in space-time, carefully maintained by human mindships, vessels controlled by thought rather than technology. Below, cities had transformed into impossible geometries that somehow worked in perfect harmony with natural law. The latest report for the Council is ready, Val Sharon announced, her tendrils moving with quiet pride. The data showed what many had thought impossible. Humans weren't just controlling their power, they were redefining the very nature of control itself. "Show me the London site," Zixtal requested. The display shifted to where it had all begun. The boy, Tommy Chen, now led a school for young consciousness shapers. Where his nightmare had once torn reality apart, children learned to weave their dreams safely into the fabric of space-time. They've developed an entirely new framework. Winter that breaks chimed, their crystalline form resonating with the quantum harmonies humans now produced. Not technological, not purely mental, but something in between. They call it conscious engineering. The evidence was everywhere. Dr. Lin Wei's research team had created stable interfaces between thought and reality, allowing humans to manifest their ideas without risking universal laws. The Chicago artist had established an entire movement of reality sculptors who created contained universes for others to explore safely. But most remarkable was what humanity hadn't done. They hadn't conquered, hadn't expanded, hadn't used their godlike powers to dominate or transform everything around them. Instead, they had chosen to become gardeners of reality, carefully cultivating the balance between what could be and what should be. "Look at this," Val Sharon said, displaying new data. Humans had discovered they could eliminate disease with a thought, restructure their bodies into beings of pure energy, even rewrite the laws of physics. But they didn't. Instead, they used their powers to enhance rather than replace, to grow rather than transform. They understand now, Zixtal observed, their skin shifting to thoughtful blue. Better than their ancestors did. Power isn't about what you can do, it's about what you choose not to do. A transmission from Earth interrupted their observation. The Council of Conscious Engineering requested permission to demonstrate their latest achievement. As the crew watched, humans across the planet joined in a synchronized act of creation. Reality rippled, shifted, and suddenly, impossible. Winter that breaks whispered. The humans had created a control bridge between dimensions, a feat their ancestors had never dared attempt. But this bridge didn't tear reality. It strengthened it, creating new connections that made the universe more stable, not less. "We understand why you fear us." Tommy Chen's voice came through, the boy who had started it all now on the cusp of adolescence. Why our ancestors feared themselves. This power could destroy everything. But that's exactly why we choose to use it differently. The display showed humanity's new path, not transcendence, not dominion, but partnership with reality itself. They had become custodians of existence, using their unique abilities to heal quantum damage, stabilize space-time fluctuations, and enhance the natural evolution of the universe. The ancient humans asked us to choose more wisely than they did. Dr. Lin Wei added, her form shifting between physical and energy states with fluid grace. They thought that meant choosing between power and wisdom. We chose to make them the same thing. As the Eternal Seeker prepared to return to the Council with their final report, Zixtal understood at last why humanity's legacy had been both terrifying and awe-inspiring. Their ancestors hadn't hidden their power out of fear alone, but out of hope. Hope that their descendants would understand what they had not, that the greatest power isn't the ability to reshape reality. It's the wisdom to know when not to.